Welcome to the Equipped Disciple channel. My name is Rick McClatchy. I will be your host. We are here to be and to make disciples of Jesus, and we do that through daily devos, through Sunday sermons, and through other discipleship resources. We are here to equip you to be an equipped disciple. Daily devos. I'm Pastor Rick, and we are in the second little section of Genesis 26. Not the final section. There's still more to come. You just got to take these things little by little. You can't overcommit yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so here we're going to jump into verse 12 right away. Isaac sowed seed into that land, and in that year he reaped 100 times what was sown. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and kept getting richer until he was very wealthy. He had flocks of sheep herds and herds of cattle and many slaves, and the Philistines were envious of him. Philistines stopped up all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of his father Abraham, filling them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Leave us, for you are much too powerful for us." So Isaac left there, camped in the Gerar Valley, and lived there. So just is in a time of famine that was going on, and just right here it says, in that year he reaped 100 times. He sowed seed in that land, and in that year he reaped 100 times what was sown. So in a season of famine, he sowed seed in the land, and in the same year he reaped 100 times what was sown. It's like, when you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be able to sow and then reap that much all in the same year, especially in a year of famine. And so really the only way you can process it is just to look to his God that said he was going to bless him, that said he was going to pour out his favor upon him, that said he was going to multiply him, and realize, wow, God is not limited by the environment that you find yourself in. You find yourself in an environment that is stuck on famine, that there's no water, that it's just dry, it's cracked, it's broken. It doesn't matter. God's not limited by those factors. He can bless what you are doing, what you have going on, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the surroundings. All we have to do is to remain faithful before the Lord and obedient to what he's telling us to do. So God is the Lord over the harvest, over the rain, over every single factor. So we need to make sure that we're siding with him first and consistently, and not siding with circumstances, not siding with situations around us. And then there's just this comment in here about the man became rich and kept getting richer because the Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and kept getting richer until he was very wealthy. So this wealth came as a result of the blessing of the Lord on his life. And he got to the point where he was very wealthy, to the point where it actually started causing problems. So it's obviously clear that God is not opposed to his people becoming wealthy, but the risk that we run is then creating a theology that says that we all have to be very, very wealthy in order to be to signify that we're being obedient, that we're following the Lord's plan and following his guidance. And that just is not true. You can't build a solid biblical case for the fact that everybody that serves the Lord should become very wealthy. Now, it does mean that when you follow biblical principles, when you do things God's way, quite frequently, it does result in blessing and favor and multiplication, but it is not a sign of spirituality, right? We can't equate them. It's an interesting statistic, but it's not something that you can rely on as a sole indicator. Verse 18, Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the days of his father Abraham, and the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died. He gave them the same names his father had given them. And then Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of spring water there. But the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek because they argued with him. And then they dug another well and they quarreled over that one also. And so he named it Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another, and they did not quarrel over it. And he named it Rehoboth. and said, "For now the Lord has made space for us, and we will be fruitful in the land." And so I like the fact that he went and unstopped the wells of his father. I just think that there's something kind of symbolic about that as well. You don't want to like allegorize every piece of scripture because we're reading a historical account. So the first interpretation of this scripture is reading it as a historical account, that he went and he unstopped the wells of his father, and then they were getting water from these wells because they had been unstopped. And sometimes we need to go back to the things of those that have gone before us and unstop those wells, take out the dirt that's been jam packed into them, and recover it, and don't just abandon it and go to dig other wells. However, then they did go and dig new wells. So that's both good, right? It's both good to unstop the wells of our fathers, but also go and dig some new wells. And so it's a good picture going on there. God makes room for his people. Sometimes it takes work, right? And so just reading through Esek and Sitnah, those first two wells that were dug, and that there wasn't enough room, and there was all kinds of quarreling going on. But then they dig another one, Rehoboth, because God made some room. God's the God of making room for the work that he's called you to do. But sometimes it takes work. We got to stick to it. We got to follow the plan. We got to keep obedient even when there's challenges and there's frustrations. So it's like Galatians 6:9, do not grow weary in well doing, but in due season you will reap if you don't faint. So kind of the big recap there, is one, he sowed in a time of famine, and in the same year he reaped a harvest of over 100-fold. That's ridiculous. That's incredible, because God is the God over the harvest, over the rain, over every factor. God's not afraid of his people becoming wealthy, but we need to not equate that with spirituality, right? So it's not an indicator of being good with God if you have money, nor is being poor an indication of being bad with God. So we just need to disconnect those things and not associate them with each other as indicators. And then unstop the wells of our fathers that have gone before us. See the work that they've done, see the resources that they've put into our lives, and make sure that we're willing to partake of that and receive that and appreciate that and be thankful for that. And make sure that we know that God's work often takes work, but God's going to make room for the work that he wants to do. So with that, God bless you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.